Now, today, prosecutors have filed charges against officials that were connected to the Flint water crisis. Now, as we know, Flint is still dealing with some pretty bad contaminated water. Lead, very, very high levels of lead, which, of course, not good. You don't want to drink that. You don't want to bathe in it. In fact, they're saying, the government's saying, don't use it. You can't use this water. Now, MLive is reporting that Michigan prosecutors just charged 4 former government officials, including 2 city emergency managers, with conspiring to violate safety rules in connection with the Flint water crisis, which exposed residents, of course, to dangerous levels of lead. Former state-appointed emergency managers Darnell, Earley, and Gerald, Ambrose, and former city employees Howard Croft, and public works superintendent, and Daugherty Johnson, a utilities manager, were the latest to be charged in this case, according to Attorney General Bill Schuette. So, look, conspiracy to violate the safety rules. So what does that mean? Well, basically, according to MLive, the defendants conspired to operate the city's water treatment plant when it was not safe to do so. Now, Schuette says, Flint was a casualty of arrogance, disdain, and failure of management, an absence of accountability. Now, you know what I think? It's the absence of giving a shit. Oh, look, there are poor minorities in your area? Well, they don't deserve good water. You know why? It's too expensive for the city. Just too expensive. We don't want to pay for that. So, fuck you guys. Again, Flint, minority African American. So here they go, putting essentially profits over people, money over minorities. So, and I want to note for the record here too, that Flint residents, they end up paying the highest cost for water than anywhere else in the United States. Okay, so they paid the most, and they're getting poisoned water. And by the way, that's still happening. They're still paying the highest amount for poisoned water. They have not fixed this shit yet.
When I first read this article, my first instinct, and this will sound a little conspiratorial, and I don't mean to, but this is what I've noticed with a lot of these issues, and a lot of my points of reference come from research that I did back in Western Pennsylvania when I was in graduate school there, and there was a lot going on with fracking. When I read this, I kind of wondered, are these people a little further down the totem pole that are taking the fall for somebody higher up? Meaning, was it really their negligence that caused this, or was it somebody higher up that made this decision? That made the decision to let things run rampant so that the water became contaminated. And I don't know enough about the Flint issue specifically, but I remember in Pennsylvania, one of the things that they would do was, instead of talking about the dangers of fracking, instead of talking about the process itself, they would talk about what they consider negligence going on with different workers in the industry, trying to downplay the fact that this process in and of itself was dangerous. And that was what they tried to do. They tried to pin it on smaller people on the totem pole. And I kind of wondered, is this something similar where really there were some people higher up that made the decision, screw Flint, we have some decisions to make and we can cut corners here, here, and here and screw them, and then let these other people take the fall, because be like, oh, this was, they conspired to do this. This was their oversight. This was their negligence. It's not the system as a whole that's screwing over this area. It's these people specifically. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm saying that was sort of a reaction that I had upon looking at it at first glance, because I think a lot of times when this stuff happens, there's people at the top that don't give a shit and are making this happen.
No, I think that you make a pretty good point. In fact, I thought it's kind of the same thing. I'm really thinking, like, when are they going to start going after people at the top? It's always the same story. I mean, Chris Christie, when it comes to Bridgegate, for example, I mean, that's the obvious thing that you can connect this to. All the lower level flunkies, gone. You're fired.
Yeah.
You're out of here. You're taking the fall. While Chris Christie, who obviously knew about this, Most likely, no, it's not going to get touched. And look,
Right.
what?
Well, and I'm just saying, I'm not trying to get too, because I'm not saying, I mean, they may in fact have been negligent, that very well may be the case. But, I wouldn't be surprised if there was someone higher up kind of pulling those strings. And, you kind of wonder, I
Well,
bet that the issue isn't solved. I bet that these people kind of took the fall for somebody more powerful. I'm
well, I
not
don't
saying I
think.
know that for sure, but usually that's how these things unfold.
Well, I don't
And the
think.
Chris Christie Bridgegate's a
Yeah,
great example.
yeah, I don't think you have
Another
to
good
wonder
example.
too much because I've got some information here. But first, Bill Schuette, Attorney General, or said when he was asked whether the investigation would lead to charges against higher placed state officials, Schuette said, "Hey, no one is excluded from this. Okay, no one's excluded. So, okay, then I expect Bill to go after Rick Snyder because we do have proof that he knew about this and that his high-level staffers knew about this." Back in February, for example, according to MLive, emails were released to the Detroit Free Press that show that Snyder's inner circle, they knew about the problems with the water and even recommended switching back to the Detroit River as the city's water source just months after the original switch to the Flint River back in April of 2014. So, how did they know? Well, GM told them. Okay, the GM, the big car parts company, they told they told the city essentially, hey, we need to switch back to this other water source because the Flint River, Flint water, is corroding our parts. It is so bad that we can't use it anymore. We're going to switch back.
Hmm.
They knew this. And after that, two of Snyder's top advisors, Valerie Brader and Mike Godola, said, "Oh, dude, hey, maybe we should switch back." But did they? No, obviously not. The Snyder administration did nothing, not a dick. They said, well, hey, look, GM, we care about GM, so you're going to have your own private supply. But when it comes to the residents of Flint, fuck them, we don't care.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
because it probably saved them money to
of course,
stay the course. Yeah.
of course. And so that's the problem. That's why I do want Governor Snyder to be charged. I do want him to be indicted. I do want him to get in trouble because ultimately the buck stops with him. If his inner circle knew, the people who are closest to him in the administration, it's pretty obvious that he knows. So, and look, okay, so back to the people who actually did get charged, right? So the accused faced felony charges of false pretenses and conspiracy to commit false pretenses. Each charge can carry prison terms of up to 20 years and or fines. Now, Schuette says something very interesting. Now, Schuette's a Republican, okay? He's not my favorite guy. He's one of the guys that actually shut down the recount here in Michigan for the presidential election that Jill Stein started, okay?
Hmm.
Now, Schuette said, quote, "It's all about numbers over people, money over health." It's always kind of ironic when a Republican says that, because that's kind of, and yeah, maybe I'm being unfair, but it's kind of their mantra. It's kind of how they run things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of their platform.
Exactly.
But it's easy to take the moral ground when there's somebody else taking the fall.
Exactly. And so that's really, I mean, the big problem with Flint. It's good to see that there is some justice, but I don't think that it's enough, especially with all of those lives that have been irrevocably changed by
Hmm.
this willful poisoning of an entire populace. Especially, I mean, when you think of the children, I know it's a common think of the children, won't you think of the children, please? But this case, it actually applies. These children are now, damaged for the rest of their lives. Okay, a lot of them have lost IQ points, like opportunity, future opportunities, massive, brain damage for some of them, life-changing situations that could have been avoided had they actually taken responsibility and not put money over the lives of people in these areas. But of course, I think that there's racism comes into play when it comes to these decisions. Because if it were a wealthy white community, you think this would have happened? No, it would have been stopped day one. They wouldn't have even had to change over to something else. It would have been the finest, most pristine, clear mountain spring water that they could find.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't drink money. I mean that's at the end of the day, it's like water is one of those things that you don't mess with, and yet people do. People in power do.
Yeah.
Whether it be a pipeline, whether it be fracking, whether it be just not going to the proper reservoir to save a buck, people do it, and it's one of those things that shouldn't even be a political issue. It should be in a nation as wealthy as ours.
Yep.
No matter where you live, whether you live in the wealthiest county or the poorest, you have access to clean drinking water. And the fact that we're not even there is just corrupt beyond measure.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.